You're listening to the Nature's Image Farm podcast. I'm your host, Greg Burns, and we're talking bees, homesteading, and the old-time ways. This episode is brought to you by EnduraHive wax-dipped equipment. The days of painting bee boxes are over. Our unique wax-dip process expels water from the wood, replaces and impregnates it with our proprietary blend of microcrystalline wax, offering superior weather protection inside and out, without the mess or expense of paint. No paint, no rot, no hassle. EnduraHive, built to endure. For more information, check them out at naturesimagefarm.com. Now, on to the show. Well, hey guys, welcome back to another Nature's Image Farm podcast episode. Glad you're here. A lot of folks, if we're honest with ourselves, as we are growing our beekeeping operation, no matter if it's 1 or 2 hives or 1 or 2,000, it's really difficult sometimes to make all the things happen to get to that point where you feel like, oh my gosh, I've made it. What does that really even mean? I know there's the cliche phrase where it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but beekeeping is definitely a journey. It is, to me, so impressive and so exciting and so interesting to learn from other beekeepers how they got where it is that they are in their journey with beekeeping. I can tell you right now, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my wife. Beekeeping is hard. It's tough. It's not easy. And having that support mechanism in there, working as a team, is really, in my opinion, what it takes, no matter the scale of operation, to make these things work. So when there are folks out there that are beekeeping as a team, I am always really interested and fascinated to learn about their journey, how they got to where they are. Today, we've got a couple awesome guests to bring on to share their story. And it's unique in that not everybody wins. Not everybody makes it. A lot of folks who might be listening, maybe they've tried and for one reason or the other just couldn't get the business, couldn't get the bees, couldn't get the team to operate, to keep moving. And that's absolutely heartbreaking. So when there's opportunities to bring folks on who can share their story, to me, it is really awesome. I am really excited to bring on Tyler and Sara Holton from the Holton Homestead. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Hi.
For folks who don't know Sara and Tyler, talk to us a little bit about where are you guys from?
Well, we're here in central Iowa, kind of outside the Des Moines metro area, and just kind of became somewhat accidental beekeepers.
That's great. Tyler and I go back a little while. As Nature's Image Farm, we've talked about it in the past. Tyler, you guys, I know you've done the same thing. These happy little accidents typically start out as homestead passions that tend to grow and flourish and develop into something. You know, many years ago, we were throwing everything against the homestead wall to see what would stick, whether it was turkeys and pigs and cows and rabbits and nursery stock and comfrey, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. There was a time where we were selling nursery stock. We were aggregating large quantities of really cool trees and nursery stock to break down the homesteaders to get variety and diversity and to build polycultures and all these kind of things. And Tyler, that's where you kind of came into the picture years and years and years ago. So Tyler, I've kind of known you all the way back to the kind of some of the permaculture beginnings of the farm, which I think is really cool, which is an interesting thread to keep in mind as this conversation continues, that you and I both have this idea where we want to work with nature rather than against it. Everything is connected, and finding those ways to keep everything connected and all those functions stacked is really important, and I know we'll get into that. Sara, I know you guys have had a tremendous journey with the homestead and the beekeeping, and we're really excited to hear more on how in the world you can keep this knucklehead in line and keep them moving forward. But you guys, can you tell us a little bit on how did your journey into beekeeping start there in the Iowa area?
Yeah, do you want the long version or do you want the
It's
short
a podcast.
version?
We can go all day. It's up to you.
So I would say it started all the way before we even bought this place. We were living in Ankeny, so in town, and two things were happening. One, we were super into fitness at the time and eating healthy. We were doing the paleo diet and going to CrossFit all the time.
Yeah.
And one day when we left our CrossFit gym, it was next to a Tractor Supply, and the sign outside Tractor Supply said Chick Days, and I said, Tyler, let's go get some chicks. And he said, okay. Now keep in mind it was not allowed in Ankeny at the time, so we got 6 outlaw chickens. And then the second thing that was happening at that time is we had the world's worst neighbor. And she kept a diary about us, a little red book where she marked when we were coming, going, what we were wearing, where we parked, when we got there, how long we were parked there. I mean, everything.
Whoa.
We actually got to know the Ankeny cops pretty well because they were at our house almost every day for no reason.
For the chickens, mostly. Once she found out we had chickens, the police were at our door every single day. And finally, they said that we're not coming back anymore because she's relentless and we really don't care about them. But it just kind of got to the point where we decided it was time to move. And growing up, for me, I grew up on an acreage. My family, like my grandpa and my uncles and everybody, farmed, and I had chickens and rabbits as a young kid. So, you know, I enjoy that stuff, and we found this acreage. Sarah bugged me saying, well, we got to see my best friend's grandpa lived on this farm, this little acreage right outside of town. We should see it. And I was swamped with my work and swamped with a mortgage already, and I really had no intentions whatsoever to move, even though I hated this neighbor. And I just said, we're going to ride it out. That's what we do. And she's like, let's just look at it. And I said, fine. We went for like a Sunday drive. We came out here, and it just like hit me like a brick.
A beautiful day in September.
Yeah, beautiful day in September. Apples on the apple tree. Things aren't brown yet, so it's nice and green. And it hit me like a brick, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this reminds me exactly of where like I grew up. And, you know, I was like neck deep in my career and struggling with that to get to the top. And I mean, I had a good job and I could make as much money as I wanted, and I really had no reason to leave. But it was almost as soon as I made that decision, I literally walked over to the apple tree, grabbed an apple, took a bite, and decided right then and there that I told the realtor, I said, okay, if you can help me sell my house, I'll buy this one. And he says, done deal.
Nice.
Got on the phone and made it happen. And so sweating for a while, having 2 mortgages down to the last minute before I could sell. But I really, you know, I didn't even want to work in the city, and I didn't want to work this job I really didn't like. I mean, I liked the paycheck, but it really didn't make me happy at all.
Yeah,
so
good point.
That was like, to sum that all up, chickens are the gateway drug. So if you're not ready for it, don't buy them. Because that was literally the turning point. As soon as we got here, you know, it was a big garden. We bought this place in like the fall of 2015, and I think it was the spring of 2017 I bought that tree bundle from you, comfrey and apples and chestnuts and mulberries, and they're all scattered around this acreage and stuff like that. And then, of course, bees too. That was kind of a background thing. If you want to take over how the bees got started.
Sure.
It's always the ladies' faults on the farms and the homestead. It always is, and it's the best thing that ever happened. Sarah, tell us about that.
So we were both working full-time still until about 2017. So about 2 years we were both working full-time. But we would come home on our lunch breaks and just walk around the farm together because we both just wanted to be here and be outside.
Aww.
So that was pretty cool. But I wanted to take a beekeeping class because I thought it would be cool to add a couple beehives to our little market garden homestead thing. And actually my grandpa and my dad kept bees back in the 80s, before I was ever even a thought. And they actually stopped keeping bees before I was around, so I never got to see it firsthand, but I always thought that was cool. And I lost my grandpa when I was 7 in a plane crash, so, you just kind of grow up and you want to find things that make you feel more connected to the people you miss or your heritage. So that's kind of what pushed me to take the beekeeping class and want to, try to have a couple backyard hives. But what actually happened was after I took the class and, Tyler got me a beehive for Valentine's Day, and we were ready to get our packages and get everything all set up, ready to go. And then I came home for lunch one day and I was selling a bunch of starter garden plants. And, I worked in the office. So I came home from lunch. I was in a hurry. I was too lazy to change into my mud boots. And so I was wearing high heels. And I ended up breaking my foot in front of some customers on my lunch break. Yeah, they heard my bones break and everything. It was a real traumatic experience for them. They're like, "Do you need me to call an ambulance?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm good. What can I get you?"
Oh my gosh, side hustling.
Yeah, exactly. So I sold them their starter plants, and then after they left, I could finally take the smile off my face, and I crawled into the house because I didn't even have my phone on me. And I crawled to the house and I said, "Tyler, I think I broke my foot." He said, "I told you to change into your boots, blah, blah, blah." Anyways, I said, "I need you to come get me." And so he carried me to the car and he took me to the urgent care and he left me there.
I had to go back to work.
But anyway, so I was in a cast and crutches when it was time to install those bee packages. And so Tyler, he tried his best to give me a piggyback ride out there and help me with what was going on, but he had to do all the work. And I think it was at that point in time where he just instantly fell in love with the bees and he stole my hobby.
It was meant to be. It's amazing how those things absolutely happen. The way I look at it is God has this plan for all of us, and things are set in place that we don't even understand. And the avenues that are taken to put us in those positions are unbelievable, pun intended. And here you guys are thinking, oh, it's just, it's a couple packages just to add to this homestead vibe that we've got going on here. Sarah's in her high heels, trying to, looking good, looking pretty, selling some extra plants. And I sold 2 extra plants today, but I broke my ankle. Now you got to install bees. It's funny how that happens. And Tyler, what was that like when she's like, "Hey, here you go, cowboy, time to pony up," and you're installing the bees now? What was that like, that first experience?
Well, she also drugged me along to the bee class because I had my own little, my own dream. I was in the permaculture thing where,
Sure.
I wanted a chestnut farm. I wanted multi-species grazing, agroforestry, and we just got this 2-acre farm, and I was like, well, this is way too small. I need a minimum 10 acres or more for chestnuts. And I was just like, if you want bees, I'll buy them, but they're all yours. Not even 1% of my brain wanted anything to do with bees. Yeah. And then the person who was doing the instructing at the class, he's a really, really good guy. He's from Ohio originally, and he did a really good job of teaching the class, and I could really relate to him. And he kind of brushed on commercial beekeeping a little bit. And at that time I was probably slumped in my chair, not really doing anything. And then he talked about how big beekeeping can be. and hundreds of hives or barrels of honey, or shipping them across the country to pollinate, trees and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, that's something I had no idea even existed. And so it just kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And I think that was the start. But I was like, oh man, big trucks and forklifts and a trailer and a truckload of bees driving across the country. It's like, I don't know why, but somehow that sounds really appealing, even though some days I regret every bit of it. But I don't know. And then just the fact that when we went to go get the packages for the first time, and went to like the closest commercial beekeeping operation, and when you drive in, they had kind of just gotten back from their California expedition and were shaking packages and splitting, and we pull in and there's 2,000 beehives kind of just nestled along the front side of their building and around the house and stuff like that. And just kind of like what you were saying, it's a funny little weave of things, and it's all kind of set in stone. That B class instructor ended up being one of my great friends, and we beekeep together now. So and the commercial beekeeper that I bought my first packages from, I ended up getting a job from them and working for them for a few years. So it is kind of interesting to look back on it, and just these things that seem very insignificant or in passing end up being kind of a little precursor to what's about to happen. But I got addicted right away, shaking that first package. I mean, and you're just like every day running home, popping the lid, seeing, holy cow, they drew more wax. Holy cow, she's laying up a whole shoot of brood. And it's like, we need more. 2 is not enough.
So yeah, you got the packages installed, or you're hooked, You're just, there's, we talk about a lot. There is just something about those bugs in the box. As hard as we try, that's actually the beauty, I think, is as hard as we try, we can get to some of the common denominators between all of us. And it's unbelievable when you ask beekeepers what it is about those bugs in the box. When you distill it down, it comes down to this similar concept. But as you guys you're taking these steps forward, right? And you're just loving this thing. At that time, in my mind, as I'm hearing your story, is you're trying to put together this diverse local ecosystem where you've got the trees, you've got the bees, right? You're thinking about, hey, we can maybe we can make some wax, maybe we can make some candles, maybe we can make some honey, maybe we can make some mead, maybe we can do all these things. Isn't it amazing that these happy little accidents typically start with just a couple packages, just a couple folks, not even knowing what the future really is for, but you feel called and geared up to do it. Sarah, as you guys are taking this as you're recovering and your foot's getting better, and you guys start to have bees as an important part of what you do, what were your goals at the time?
I just thought, okay, we have a garden and pollinators help the garden, and I want to feel close to my grandpa and see what he used to do. I had no, big goals with it beyond that. I didn't even think we would make honey.
I think part of it too was, you're exactly right. We were just kind of diversifying, and we kind of knew we wanted to go. Well, she wanted to go to the farmer's market. I kind of resisted, but and I feel like maybe I had some imposter syndrome at first, but
yeah.
And she's like, no, we should have a booth at the farmer's market, and so we were kind of like, what are we even going to put on the table? Like the only thing really consistent year round would be chicken eggs. And we kind of had a little business built on that at first. And we're did like a minor CSA program where it was like, we live close to a high population of people and chickens were outlawed there. So we kind of leveraged that, and we're doing like weekly egg delivery, but it was, the CSA model they pay a month in advance and then they get delivery. And then we were doing, as the garden progressed or as the fruit trees progressed and stuff like that, we had add-ons. We had our own like Facebook group buying page. So whatever was extra a la carte for that day or that week would get delivered with your eggs and stuff. And so we thought, the next step would be a farmer's market and just kind of fill out that table. So whether it was a little bit of honey, a little bit of wax to go along with everything else we were doing, it was, like you said, that really casting a really wide net and seeing what sticks. And we've done
everything.
A lot. Yeah, we've done a lot and gotten rid of a lot. And it's kind of now just whittled down to mostly bees. And that takes up more than enough time, and it's much more rewarding for us. And we are fortunate that in this area, we're not quite a food desert. Obviously there's a lot of room for improvement, but we have made a lot of friends and know a lot of people in this area that do some of those things that we tried a lot better. And it's not that we kind of gave it up, but it's like we don't need to do it because there's plenty of access, and some people are also trying to make a living at what they're doing. And it's just like a gracefully bow out to like the market garden thing or the
sourdough,
or like baking bread and stuff like that. When those things kind of show up, it's like we want those people to succeed too. And so it's like we can focus on what we're doing and really hone that in.
But I do love that we've tried a lot of different things, and I you don't know until you try, and then this allowed us to kind of see where our passion lies.
That's huge, because there, if you look back to the Holtons, the genesis, I know for us, if you would have told us that we're going to be out here doing what we're doing, or we're going to be on a podcast talking to other beekeepers or making a go as a business X amount of years later, 10 years later, I would, what? Bees? There's no way. They sting. I don't really like them that much. I don't even like honey that much. What are you talking about?
Right.
As you guys are building this thing up, you hit on a couple points, and I know Tyler and I and Sarah, we can speak to this from an extremely, sometimes painfully salt in the wounds experiential point, because a lot of us who get into whatever that we're doing, and I don't mean to say that permaculture is the fault of it, but sometimes when you're in this mindset, this holistic thinking, everything is connected, which it is, when you're looking at trying to do something financially for a profit so you can be financially resilient. A lot of folks spend a lot of time putting all their effort into being physically resilient. Great, I'll grow perennial agroforestry and we'll have a yield for X amount of time, and maybe we'll have goats or cows or pigs underneath, and we get that, and that makes sense. How does that turn into dollars that actually makes sense to keep the lights on and to pay the mortgage and to be able to invest back into the farm? Gets to be really challenging. And at homestead scale, the beautiful part about it is when you're throwing everything against the wall, when you, like you said, casting a wide net, you start to see opportunities. You start to see where things, for us, the uncomfortable truth was that there was an economy to scale on every single thing that we did that was a massive brick wall. If we wanted to make a go at raising forest-raised pork, guess what? We needed a tremendous amount of more of acreage, infrastructure, time, move the animals, no matter which aspect it was, chickens, to scale it up to where it was financially sustainable and made sense for us to invest more of our time into it. It didn't scale with the labor force, with our experience, and with the acreage that we were working with. It just didn't make any kind of sense. But there seems to be something special about the bees. As you guys are sorting through all this and you say, hey, there's somebody else who maybe wants to sell eggs, or maybe there's someone who's crazy enough to start a sourdough starter business or a kombucha line of whatever that it might be, which are all awesome things. The fact that you start there and you can kind of see how everything is connected, how important each thing is for each other. What was it about the bees that you saw early on with it that you said, hey, we're going to push all of our chips into this direction and go, I'm not going to say all your chips are hedged on bees, but from what I understand that you guys do, you're not dabbling with beekeeping anymore. I mean, you've got a truck loaded, you're going out west, you're doing this thing full time. It's big scale, it's commercial scale now. Can you talk to us about that transition from a couple hives that say we're going to hedge our bets to this? What does that look like, going from a couple hives to where you guys are at now?
I mentioned before that I just kind of started to really hate my job, even though it was paying all the bills and keeping money in my pocket. And really what ended up happening was just kind of funneling a lot of that money straight into the homestead to see how fast it can be, kind of at least get the wheels turning on that and maybe see it kind of do its own thing. Because in my mind, I think I already knew that as soon as I saw my opportunity, I was trying to get out. But with having such a high paying job in my mid 20s, it was also one of those things where I thought I would never ever get out. Like, there's just no way you can walk away from some money like this, and with a few hives in the backyard, like, how am I ever going to make that tipping point or that bounce and make that back? And so, but that still never really stopped me, but it was one of those limiting factors. And I'm a big believer in some of the hardest decisions you'll ever make in your life, in your business, in your career is one of those decisions that you probably won't make and somebody will make for you. So we hit this time where in my industry we had a slow period, and I worked in the collision repair industry. So I worked on heavy and medium hit cars hit deer all the time. I'm in the Midwest, so there's an unlimited amount of deer hits, and in the city there's car accidents every day. So I mean, made a lot of money doing that, but there's a lot of politics involved in that. And me being the youngest person in the shop, you're the first person, or, the newest person in is usually the first person out when things get rough, and when business slows down, the teeth start showing. So I got tired of the politics and all that stuff, and usually you just pack your toolbox. And there's a reason why toolboxes in those big shops like that have wheels, because you just push them to the next shop. Not a big deal. But I got tired of that, and I kind of felt like I hit my ceiling. And so I just said, you know what, I need to take a break from cars. And I didn't really have a plan. I picked up a job working, I really wanted to work outside and maybe have some more time for the bees and all the stuff. So I got a job offer to kind of manage a construction crew, mostly building fences. And so one thing, like, it was probably like a 75% pay cut, but I was happier.
That's huge.
I know. And so I kind of was doing that all summer. And in the back of my mind, I was like, man, we're laid off for winter. What are we going to do? Laid off for winter. What are we going to do? And it just kind of dawned on me that, like, that's going to line up. Like, what I would love to do is go to California for the almond pollination.
Nice.
So, like, I just put that in my head, and I'm a big person of manifesting what you want. And, like, if you obsess over it like that, practically, of course, these opportunities, even small windows, open. And if you're already ready for them, they're not impossible to step through. But if you're not preparing yourself for them, or even just the craziest ideas of, like, I'm going to quit my job and go to California. Like, if I were to say that just out loud, it doesn't make any sense. But if you just say, if I ever see my opportunity, or what if, like, I come up with 1,000 scenarios that don't make any sense, but you find yourself standing in that situation where, like, wow, it makes sense right now, I'm going to do it. And just kind of striking when the iron's hot has got me much further than I think being kind of reserved or having a really detailed plan. You got to be a little loose about it. But anyway, I saw an opportunity, a friend, not really a friend, but somebody, an acquaintance I kind of knew on Facebook, in that industry as an almond broker in California, was saying, hey, I'm growing my business, I'm looking for more bees. And I just thought, I'm going to shoot my shot. And I sent him a message. I said, if you're growing your business and you're looking for an employee, I'm willing to drive out to California, bring my flatbed truck, bring my old beat up bee forklift, and I'll work for you. Mostly because I want to just get my foot in the door and see what that industry is all about. We had sent some bees to California prior, but they kind of just get loaded here and sent on a truck, and then you just don't see them till they come back. You don't know the ins and outs. You don't know anything really. And I just think the stars aligned because we took a chance on each other. He didn't know me for anything, and I didn't know him for anything, and it almost came out came down to the last minute where it's like, hey, like, I think I'm leaving tomorrow. You still have a job for me? You got a place for me to stay? And he's like, yeah, come on out. And
can I
Sarah, what's going through your mind right now? Here's this guy, he's got a truck and a forklift, and hey, honey, by the way, I'm going across the Rockies, and I hope the truck makes it. I hope I got enough money for fuel and food. What's going through your mind as this plan's like forming up?
Yeah, my brain was probably gonna explode. So first of all, I'm a big true crime fan, and when he said that, hey, I got a job in California, I just have to drive out there, they're gonna give me a place to live and they're gonna pay me immediately, I'm like, they're gonna kill you. You don't know them. He told me he was because they didn't really know him, so the place for him to stay while he was out there was in a camper, which worked out great, right? But all going through my mind, I'm like, you're never gonna make it there. Your truck is very questionable. There's so many factors against you. You're driving in snow. I mean, getting out there was a whole thing. And then once you get there, like, what if you get there and they're like, just kidding. It's actually not how it's going to go down. I don't know. It was just very like, all right.
Yes. And so far, I pretty much kind of wore out all my favors with Sarah, because I was like, I'm quitting my job, what do you think? And she's like, do whatever you want, like,
oh boy,
I don't know. She's been supportive and probably maybe an enabler this whole time, but
oh, I see what he did there. Okay.
Yeah. But that's because I quit my job first, and the rule has always been, I don't care what you do as long as you can still pay the bills.
So I kind of I let her go first and then asked for the same favor back. And
smart.
But yeah, anyway, we're both so hard-headed and determined that I think we would do whatever it took, because even when I was working the construction job during the day, I knew money was tight, and so I picked up a warehouse job loading semis with the forklift, like freight dock, from like 8 p.m. to 2 in the morning, and then I'd come home and rest for a little bit and then get up bright and early, and leave by 6 a.m. to start that construction job. So I knew, I'm no stranger to doing whatever it takes. And
that's it.
That's a rough one, but I knew that the light at the end of the tunnel was getting to California, and I had no idea what it would be, but it was just one of those things where I just needed to get there, kind of a change of pace. But all things stacked against you. It was an absolute blizzard the night I tried to leave.
Yep.
My truck had a breakdown in the parking lot of the gas station just 2 miles up the road from me, and I had to call.
No, I messaged you an hour after you had left, because you left in the blizzard, and I said, how's it going? And you're like, I'm at Come and Go a mile down the road. Okay, thanks for letting me know.
Well, I was trying to get my truck to start again, and so I just said, hey, there's a sensor in my toolbox. Can you grab this wrench? And I laid in the parking lot with like 2 inches of snow. The snowplow is going around my truck because I'm like blocked in.
Oh my gosh.
And anyway, I changed the sensor and it started, and she's like, are you sure you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I have to. And so
it was the most incredible thing. Like, oh, this might be the problem. I think I know where the sensor is. Can you grab this, this, and this? And we get there. He does it. And his truck starts and it drives. And I think we just stood in the parking lot and both hugged and cried a little bit. And then I was like, all right, you're on your own.
Yeah. So anyway, I made it. And that was January 2019, right? January 2019 is when I started working in California. Helped broker with a few thousand hives. Basically, the beekeepers will send them to the broker. The broker works with the almond growers and kind of lines all the bees up that they need, and takes possession of the bees and puts them in, takes them out when the bloom's done, and then organizes the semis, reloads them, and send them back where they go. That sounds really easy, but the time frame is we have about 2 weeks, if the weather permits, to get all the bees into the orchard before the bloom starts. So like generally February 1st to you should be absolutely done by February 14th. Otherwise you're probably in trouble. So I did that January 2019, and even up until January 2024, I'm still doing that. We've grown that business. I think it was a few thousand hives, maybe 5,000 or something that first year, 3 to 5,000. And at one point we were doing at least 15,000 or more, moving them in. And it's really kind of just been a 2-person with some help here and there job. So that's grown quite a bit. And in the meantime, I've had more and more bees, and I bring mine. And the reason why I go to California too was it is a paying job, but I wanted to learn more and have access to my bees and maybe take better care of them, because you're always better off. You'll never take care of, or someone else will never take care of your bees as good as you will. So being out there was another benefit to hopefully, give me even 1% advantage of my next year's expansion or stuff like that. But so finishing up that almond pollination, I came home around middle of April, close to May, and I was already sending some bees to California. I only had probably like 20 hives or something that winter, or 40 or something like that. And I sent them to California with that commercial beekeeper that I bought my first packages from. He was kind of filling out a semi or whatever. And I went back to pick up my bees after I got back, and he's like, so, how was it? And he's like, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I don't really have a plan yet. I guess I'm going to just try and be a beekeeper and see if I can make my 40 hives worth it or pick up another job somewhere. And he's like, well, why don't you come work for me? And I was like, wow, I did not expect that whatsoever. And we had talked back and forth a little bit, and he kind of made me a job that I couldn't refuse. And I just looked at it like, there's no better on-the-job training than somebody who's been doing it. He's been beekeeping almost 30 years now, so he's done nearly everything, seen it all, and so it was a good opportunity to kind of jump in and learn on the job. And I worked there for 4 or 5 years, I think, yeah. And so I learned a lot, and he knew right off the bat that I was ready to do my own thing at any time, and he said, that's fine, just give me a heads up when you want to quit and kind of do your own thing, and I'll help you if I can. So that was another huge blessing, I think, to get me where I'm going. I highly recommend anybody out there that's looking to be a beekeeper full time, is if you can put in the time with anybody who's been doing it for a little bit, you'll learn more than anything, any book or seminar, or even just talking to people. Just getting your hands in it and doing it is the best way to learn.
Nothing like the experience. I know it's something, and I think it's true for all industries, but one thing that we've taken to heart is if you want to get good at something, you really got to go seek and spend time with somebody who makes a living doing it. They're not just, and it's no slight or no dig to somebody who is just having fun as a hobbyist. We can learn. There's something to learn from everybody all the time about all things, for sure. But if you really want to be successful as a business, you really got to be able to find and spend time with somebody who is successful with that endeavor as a business. You also have to find the right person who is successful as a business, who wants to share the torch and actually give you good information, because Lord knows how many folks have been sabotaged or have been given some misinformation intent. There's a lot of politics when it comes to, as you know, with commercial beekeeping. But here you guys go, 2 hives. You said you grow, maybe we're somewhere around 40. You want to eventually throw some on the back of the truck, take out their, start to grow your operation. What's interesting is I'm trying to, if I can, I don't even know that I can put this in the right framework, but you somehow remind me between, and I see your social media post. So you're somehow this mix of a Cormac McCarthy Blood Meridian and a Stephen King's Gunslinger. You're this combination of these two, where you're out there just blazing this trail. You're gonna make it happen. That's a very unique kind of a person, and I think that's what it takes, not just for you, but Sara equally. You got to both be gunslingers at the same time doing this thing, or there's no way that kind of a thing is going to work. How do you go from, 40 colonies to some folks is like unimaginable, right? You're at this stage of the game where you know what 400 looks like, you know what 4,000 looks like, and in the future you may know what it's like to help manage 40,000. in my mind, you're so smoothly, like I said, as this gunslinger talking about this, like you're totally, you don't go from figuring out how to raise 2 colonies or maybe even 40 colonies. The management style and practice and ideals and mentality, 2 colonies doesn't necessarily translate to 40 or 4,000. The management, the operation, the muscle memory, all the things that you do and don't do is completely different. What has that learning curve been like for you as you've gone from, I'm going to do this backyard beekeeper approach to here's how it's really done approach? I mean, how has that been for you, grasping it and putting that into practice?
Well, that just immersing yourself in, like, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to California, is because there's people that do it, and you can sit and think like, well, that's not even possible. I don't know how they do it. And you just ask that question, why? And it's like, well, somebody out there does it. So that means it's not impossible. Mm-hmm. And so I just need to, I need to change my mindset a little bit on what is possible or what is practical or what is achievable. But I ask a lot of questions from a lot of people who know the answer, and I kind of obsess, like, if I don't know the answer, I will find it out, and sometimes to my detriment. But just knowing that I could immerse myself in that in California, talking to other beekeepers there, actually doing the work, the job I had here in Iowa for that 5,000 hive operation was like a big eye-opener. But you just almost going all the way back to the permaculture thing, like you said, is working with nature and stacking functions. I think that is a good baseline. And the job I worked was, the more money I made was more how efficiently I worked and stacked those functions there too. Just once you start working with the bees and like knowing what you're looking for and what you're not looking for, and just kind of parsing down all the cumbersome steps and just trying to be as efficient as possible while checking the highest probability responsibilities you need to check for in the beehives, things get a lot easier. And once you really kind of dial in your beekeeping, like in a sense, when you go to a bee yard, the one hive you look at should really look like the rest of them in the yard. And so if you kind of just do a few spot checks, everything checks out, you're probably in good shape. But yeah, it's kind of hard to think about, but once you start doing it, things get a little easier. So you kind of almost have to just dive in and do it. But it does, again, help to kind of get that practice in with someone else and just see how it's actually done by somebody who does it all the time.
As you're growing your home, well, it applies to all aspects of your life, your marriage, your homestead, your business. If you go back to the analogy of the backyard beekeeper, the backyard beekeeper is literally worried through anxiety about every bee, every frame, every box, every lid, every colony, right? And so they're going through and inspecting every frame, every box, every colony, and all these things that you don't know, and it creates this panic and this worry and this fear and this anxiety. As you develop experience, through experience, you gain wisdom. With that wisdom, you're able now to look at a colony and say, hey, I can crack a lid, I can look down, I can get a really good picture of what the situation is based on my experience and wisdom. I can now spot check a yard. I can go through, one colony on this 4-way pallet. I can go through 1 or 2 pallets in this little grouping, and you can start to get a really good understanding of what's going on. I think the same thing applies in our marriages, our homesteads, all these things. At first, we're sweating all these little details. We're putting so much emphasis on all these little tiny things all the time. It's preventing us sometimes from being the best versions of ourselves, but we have to go through that process to fully understand and appreciate that, hey, there are some things that we're going to grow into, ways that we're going to better learn and understand that are going to become easier and more efficient. Sarah, as you guys are growing this team, as Tyler's off running to California, he's out there, you're in Iowa, I'm sure you guys are missing each other like crazy. You're trying to figure this whole thing out. What are the finances are looking like? Are we going to make it happen? Some months, I'm sure, like everybody else, you're scraping, you're trying to figure out how are we going to pay the next bill? We need to do all these things. Can you walk us through, Sara, your mindset as you're dealing with it on the home front, as Tyler's out in California making it happen? What are things like for you? And what's your mindset as you try to continue to help and make these things work?
So while he's doing all the beekeeping thing, I think for something we kind of brushed over is the whole time I'm still running an online business or, selling our products here. So I definitely kept busy, which helped the time pass while he was gone. Although he gets to miss all of the snow and winter, so a little jealous there. But I just definitely immerse myself in the business side of it as well. Even though it's winter time, and through COVID, we were just, we kind of, I don't know, our business is, it's like one whole, but it is two separate things. We both kind of divide and conquer. So it's like we both know what we're in charge of, and I have faith that he's going to do the things that he said he was going to do, and I think the same goes for him. So we just kind of divide and conquer our tasks, our jobs, our bills, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean the business side of it, like we almost have, it is kind of now somewhat split a little bit, but like there's the beekeeping side of it, and then there's the retail honey sale side of it. And honestly, I mean, we wouldn't have the branding or brand image that we have, period, without Sara kind of manning that entire thing and pushing it out the way she does. We do just kind of, and I kind of going back to, finding what works for you and stuff like that, and making it work with your partner is just knowing what you're good at and dividing and conquer. Like she's saying, she does a really good job at marketing and branding and sales, and I'm better suited, probably not always in front of the customer and in the bee yard instead. So you start to mature as you get as a beekeeper. It's just inevitable. You start to turn into a grumpy old beekeeper sometimes. So it's better off to just stay in the bee yard every now and then.
Sara, hey, she's got some stories she's holding back there. I can tell, knowing your strengths and weaknesses. One of the great things, you can see it, I see it in you guys, is you got to be honest. You got to be able to say to your partner, hey, you know what? You are really good at this certain thing. The things that you're not as strong on, what can I do to help support you? But you find that with good teams is you're both say, you know what, I really suck at this. I feel that I've got this handled. You're really good at that. The delegation of duty there is something I think you absolutely have to have, because there's no way you can both wear all the hats at the same time and just be going back and forth, because you run yourself ragged. There's nothing left in the tank. What were some hard lessons learned as a couple, as you guys are helping to put this thing together to form up this team? What were some hard lessons learned that you'd like to share with some other couples?
Money sucks, because we both, I think our heart was in it, and we both were enjoying everything we were doing. And when we were fresh here and fresh starting the business, I'm going to be real honest, Tyler made really good money. So how we met was at the body shop. We both worked at this big dealership together. He worked on the cars and I worked in the office. So he made a lot more money than I did, and I didn't ever really look at my job as important. Like, I could go get a job anywhere getting paid roughly the same amount of money. Anyways, so when I was transitioning from a full-time job to, now I want to spend as much time as possible here at the homestead, build our business, build our brand, that kind of stuff. I was working a lot of, part-time jobs and stuff to make ends meet, but I wasn't able to contribute the same way that he was financially. And I remember there was a few months where it was pretty stressful. I know that Tyler was probably slightly envious of the amount of time that I was spending here versus he was stuck working full time, and he was paying for everything here or investing a lot of money. And I remember sitting on the porch outside while he was telling me, I can't keep bankrolling this, and you gotta make money off of the stuff. And it does get stressful like that. And of course you never want to feel like you're not pulling your weight.
Right.
But you got to figure out your place, and you got to figure out what's profitable, what's not, how can we keep going, and one person can't do everything.
Oh, that's hard, because you're in a spot, and I know the feeling. You're in a spot where here's all these things that we really love to do. Here's all these things that we really want to do. And we can justify and make ourselves believe that we need to have all these things going on at once to make this thing happen. At some point, though, you have a bottom line. And when you are in the red, and here's these things that you think you want to do or are supposed to do, or you need this X amount of input to make that thing work, and you eventually get to this rock bottom point to where it says, okay, we're beyond pencil and paper at the Crackle Barrel restaurant making this business work. Like, it is right in front of us. Here is a bill for $4,000, and we only have $800 coming in the next 3 months on this endeavor. What are we doing here? Like, at some point, like, if the numbers don't lie, and you say, okay, as much as I love this and it should be a part of what we do, it doesn't make sense. There's this really big challenge, and I'm with you, and I think a lot of folks right now listening to this are in this position where you have the dreamers and the schemers and the pie in the sky, and I think that that's an important part of the beginning of the journey. That's what keeps us motivated and keeps us passionate about keeping these fires lit to get you into that position to find the thing that works. But it's not exactly easy to be honest and look at something and say, I really love Rex rabbits, but no matter what we do, we cannot make enough fur. We cannot make enough meat. We can't scale this thing up. We can't even afford the time we're putting into it now. And you break off of that. Something happens when you start to then take your time and your effort off all these other things and then put it on the thing that is moving forward. Has there been a point where all of a sudden a spark caught fire and you said, oh my gosh, I think we can actually make a go at this? What was that for you guys?
I think what ended up happening is we just started kind of cutting things away that didn't work. And so we take turns back and forth about who's going to motivate the other or give the other person the bad news, or like, because there'll be some things where I'm like, I'm putting my foot down. We're not getting rid of our pork, our pasture pork or whatever, and Sarah's like, but it doesn't make sense, or we're not making any money, or the costs are too high. And then finally she'll convince me that we'll get rid of that. Things get a lot easier and a lot better. Or, we took a break from the market garden thing, and that was, something we were passionate about, but it was this thing where you got to really be honest with yourself. Like, what's a hobby, or what's profitable, or do you scale it down? Like, everybody talks about scale up, but finding your little niche, or, it's not always about just get rid of it altogether, but we like to grow in a garden because we like to eat fresh veggies and stuff like that. But just because we had an acre or half acre plot garden and hundreds of tomato plants doesn't mean, that's successful or that's going to work. Where we really should have been was like 10 tomato plants, and just for ourselves. All these, you get stuck in this economy of scale and like scale up and things get better, but not always. And so, I think the light just kind of clicked on when we just like, we got so busy with the bees, or busy with me being gone for 3 or 4 months at a time. A lot of things just kind of had to be, put away, or we told ourselves it'd be temporary,
forcefully or not.
Yeah. And so we kind of just one day just woke up and it's like, well, we really only have like the chickens and the bees to kind of deal with, and that is a downplay because that's still a lot of work.
That is, well, and I'm sorry, I just want to speak in for a second. It wasn't just necessarily that we woke up and we're like, oh, let's not do this today.
But I mean, it just kind of dawned on us one day.
It happens when, I've had employees since 2019, and at one point we had 6 employees. A couple were even full-time, and I finally got a paycheck from the homestead too, which was like a huge achievement for us. But once you start involving things like payroll, it kind of changes things because, okay, I need 4 employees here every single day to help me with my market garden. And yes, we make this beautiful produce and a ton of it, but is it selling at the farmer's market? And is a lot of it going to waste because people aren't buying it? Like, those are the kinds of decisions that you have to make that makes it very difficult. Like, I need to cut out this whole part of our business to be able to still have money in the bank to fund the other things that actually make us money. It's sad, hard truths, but money's the root of all the things.
Yeah, I think so. Like when we finally started whittling down to what makes sense, every day, we still are kind of fine tuning some things, but it just seems like once we found our niche or a rut in the road, and we can kind of start to coast a little bit, things really started to make sense, and we start picking up steam now. And
especially from a business standpoint too, it's okay, so my tomatoes I can sell at 1, maybe 2 markets if they were super fresh, but the honey,
that's a big thing. I think what changes honey and bees is like it's shelf stable, and like you have a product to sell. Hopefully you harvest 1 or 2 times a year or something like that, but you have enough product to get you through a whole year, hopefully, or if you sell out early, that's even better. But I mean, you have something that you can take with you, stays fresh. It's a premium product. And one of the things I think is a huge benefit on beekeeping is you don't have to own a lot of land. Like we live on a 2-acre acreage here, and I keep almost next to no bees at my house. So that means I've got 20 plus landowners that I pay quote unquote rent to have the bees there, and most of them don't want anything, but I give them honey at the end of the year, just like out of tradition. But you can get a lot done without having a lot yourself, and I think it also just once you really dial in working with the bees and not against them, and being a proactive beekeeper instead of a reactive beekeeper. You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, how a lot of hobbyists in the first few years and stuff like that are anxious and worrisome every time they open up the hive. But if you have confidence in what you do, and confidence in what you have done so far, and confidence about what's about to happen next in your beekeeping year, in the patterns you recognize, you go into the bee yard with confidence and knowing what is happening and what's about to happen, and kind of having a map of what's going to happen the rest of your bee year, with some variables thrown in, of course, but you're not in that worrisome state. And so I think you have a level head and can make key decisions and make your work go a lot further. And so there is something special about beekeeping. I think that if you can kind of line up all those things, you can really excel at a fast rate.
That's really important as you grow. Not only just your bees, your business, your relationships, is understanding that nuance. What you just said there is a big deal. And I'm gonna, this is one of those. If you've got tender toes, warning, go ahead and lace up your steel toe boots, because I guarantee you we're going to step on it right here. But everybody buys into the American scheme where it's bigger, better, faster, stronger, scale up, scale up, scale up, scale up. And for those that have invested our time, our money, our efforts, our energy, everything into it, you pour it all out. Your money, physically, spiritually, mentally, the whole thing. You end up with an end result that I'm not saying for everybody, but for a lot of us, that's not what we bought into. And the idea of constantly scaling up and scaling up and scaling up, we all want to grow. We all want to find that spot where we feel, not just feel successful, but the numbers are showing us that, hey, we're in the black. We have money to keep investing. And now this business is solvent. It's fluid. We've got something here. That's where we all want to get. And I think, I would be the first ones to say it, and maybe you guys too. Scaling up actually sometimes is going to cause you more problems than downsizing and scaling down the things that are liabilities, focusing your effort and energy on the thing that are actually assets, developing and getting more proficient and resilient with the niche that you're in. 9 times out of 10 is going to create a higher net yield than to try to jump up to that next scale. Tyler, we're definitely going to have you back on and talk more about some of the nuts and the bolts, the really interesting aspects of beekeeping specifically. But Sara, where can folks find more about the Holton Homestead and the products that you've got to offer?
Our website, holtonhomestead.com, is a great resource. If anyone is local to the Iowa area, we do have a bunch of retail stores we're in across Iowa, which is exciting, our local grocery stores. And I put a map on our website for all the retail stores we're in, so people can check that out.
Awesome. Tyler, any final thoughts that you want to share with folks before we close it out?
I'm excited that you have us on here, and excited that you want to have me back. So I must have not done a bad job.
Well, you guys are gunslingers, and I appreciate that. We know what it's like to try to dig in, try to make the thing work, and you put literally everything, and then some on the line to make it work. I really appreciate that about you guys. I've enjoyed watching you guys' growth, what you guys do. It's really important. I think a lot of folks are in this place where they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their journey. And so having conversations like this, letting folks know you're not alone. None of us have it figured out. It's day by day, step by step. But I think the takeaway is you got to be a gunslinger. You got to be willing to get in there, do the work, get in that old Ford and drive across the Rockies in the snow with a crescent wrench and a sensor.
Yep, 100%.
If you can't do that, then you might need to find a different occupation.
Yep.
So Sara, Tyler, thanks a lot for spending time with us here on the Nature's Image Farm podcast. I want to thank all the folks for listening and tuning in. Be sure to check out their links. We'll put them in the descriptions below. Check out the Holton Homestead. Hey, if you're in that place and you're looking at, hey, I want to grow my business, I want to keep pushing forward, I hope that this episode was helpful. Stay tuned for further episodes. We're going to get Tyler on the ropes here and talk more about his beekeeping experience. It's been a lot of fun. I want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, I want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.